Hello boys and girls, welcome to Darkheart Thicket, which is one of the new dungeons in Season 3 of Dragonflight Mythic plus Dungeon Pool. In this short guide we'll be going through the most important trash mechanics and of course the boss fights. Starting with the Dread Soul Poisoners, they're going to cast Nightmare Toxin on somebody in your party. It is supposed to be poison, although my friends do not show it as a poison. It's a big green circle around the person. They get a nasty dot that you have to heal through, and once it expires it blows up, so make sure you're not in the circle once the expiration time comes. The Frenzied Nightclaws will just charge somebody and leave a stacking dot on them. Usually they prefer the range players. So you have a way to CC them or root them. You can actually mitigate the damage, which ticks for a lot, especially at higher count charges. And you just saw a screech go off by one of the screechers. It hits for a ton and it disorients the player, so make sure you interrupt those. Next on the menu is the Festerhide Grizzly, one of the scariest mobs in this dungeon. It's a big angry bear which casts Mothering Roar. This does damage to the party, but it also leaves a stacking debuff, so the more it casts the roar, the more damage the party is going to take. Basically, you have to kill this before it becomes unhealable. You also see the small ads that spawn. They fixate somebody, they start going towards them, and they leave puddles on the ground, which damage you if you stay inside them. So stay out of the poop. Cleave down the ads and be careful because the bear has a frontal swipe as well. Keep in mind that just before the first boss you have to fight two of these bears at the same time, so the roar damage starts to stack very quickly and very high, but you also have to keep in mind that this is actually outrangeable. The range is 30 yards, so if you run past that threshold you're not going to get hit by the roars. You will also see some Dread Soul Ruiners. Make sure to interrupt their despairs as much as you can, and they also have a channel code Star Shower, which starts leaving puddles on the ground. You need to interrupt that one as well. And you will also encounter some crazed Razor Beaks, which are going to propel forward, which is kinda hard to see. It's only designated by the direction they're facing, but if they hit you, they'll probably one-shot you if the key is a little bit higher, so definitely don't stand in their way. If you survive the double bear pool, you'll be at the first boss, Archdruid Glydalis. He will occasionally jump to the furthest player away and leave a debuff on them, which will keep ticking and do damage until they die or they're healed above 90% health. So you can decide who wants to bait that and then heal them very quickly above 90% health, as long as they're not standing in front of the boss, because he is occasionally also going to charge and knock back the tank. As you can see, my melee got hit here, but it was not a tyrannical key, so luckily they managed to survive it. And the last mechanic are those same small ads that you saw on the bear pools during the trash. They fixate somebody and they start leaving pools on the ground that you need to stay away from, so cleave them down as quickly as possible to reduce the area that they're going to take with their pools. Rinse and repeat those three mechanics and you'll be past the first boss in no time. The Dreads that you're going to see next will jump out of the pack and throw spears at people, which leave a nasty poison spear debuff. At the same time, the flowers around them will do this big stomp on the ground, so make sure you don't stand inside of the blast area. Some of the packs are also going to have keepers inside which throw mushrooms at the ground. They grow and explode, so stay far away from them, and they will also heal the plants around them, the small flowers, so make sure to prio damage them first so you can kill the flowers after they're dead. Before the second boss you have to kill several dwellers as well. They cast Tormenting Eye, which is a channel dot which you need to interrupt because it not only damages your party members, but if the channel completes they're feared for 4 seconds. There's a total of 5 mobs like these in the mist around the second boss, but you can pull all of them at the same time because you can AoE stun them as well. The second boss is a big tree called Post-Oakheart, and one of his main abilities is Shattered Earth, which damages everybody in your party and it also knocks them back. You should be aware of your positioning because he's also going to cast Strangling Roots, which leaves flowers on the ground. If you walk on top of the flowers, you are rooted for a whole minute. And you also be taking damage until the flower is either killed or the minute expires, so definitely make sure you don't walk over these or you do not get knocked back into one of them. Other than that, the boss has a pretty big tank crush mechanic, which starts as a dot and finishes with a big slam at the end, so make sure you're prepared for that. And last but not least, this boss also has a frontal cone, so make sure you position accordingly and you do not get hit by it. The trash that follows includes some small bubbles that explode on that, and then you have the big Blood Fury Elementals, which drops these big balls from the sky, which are kinda hard to see where they hit, but if they hit, they do a lot of damage, and they also heal the bubble itself, so make sure you move them out. And as you also saw, it fixates somebody and charges in that direction, so make sure you're not standing on its way. Once it dies, it separates into several other smaller elementals. You need to kill these as quickly as possible and not let them finish their cast, because they will become big elementals as well. There's also small eggs on the side. If you walk on top of them, you summon small whelplings, so make sure you do not get overwhelmed by those. Third boss is a big dragon called Dresaron, and it also has a fronto, which not only damages the targets in front, but it also reduces their armor, so make sure you're standing behind the boss. He's also going to cast something called Downdraft, which is going to push players away from the boss for 8 seconds, so if you have a movement ability, make sure to save it for this phase, as you're surrounded by the same small eggs that we saw earlier, so if you walk on top of them, you're going to summon a bunch of small whelps. The last ability is called Earth-Shaking Roar, and as you can see, it leaves a patch on the ground that you need to stay away from, because if you stay inside, you'll be taking ticking damage. Next, you're going to see some imps. Interrupt as many firebolts as you can, but make sure you save an interrupt for the Dread Inferno, which is this big cast that not only does much more damage than the firebolts, but it also does AoE around the person. They're usually accompanied by summoners, which also have a single target cast called Shadow Bolt. Interrupt as many as you can, and they also have the Curse of Isolation, which does AoE damage if it goes off. There's also stalkers, which are going to jump behind somebody and do a bunch of damage, the same mobs basically as the ones that we saw in Vortex Pinnacle. You also see a pack of bats, which have a nasty stacking disease that not only does damage to the target, but it also transfers health to the mobs themselves. So if you don't have a dispel, make sure to CC those mobs as much as you can so they don't leech from your tank or whoever has the disease. And the last trash pack before the last boss basically combines all of these mobs all at once, plus a Deadeye mob, which is a hunter, who will scorch your tank and shoot at random people. He's also going to leave a decoy mob, which will die as soon as you kill the original, so no need to prio focus this. Last boss is Shade of Zavius, which is quite interesting and hard boss. He's going to cast Nightmare Bolt on somebody, which does a ton of damage and leaves a debuff on the target designated by the purple circle around you. It's called Waking Nightmare, and it's going to silence you if you're not close to your allies. Feet on the Weak is another targeted player, which is going to just take damage for 5 seconds, you have to heal through that. And there's yet another random dot called Festering Rip, which not only does damage, but it also decreases the healing taken. At least this one you can dispel. And while you want to stack for the Waking Nightmare debuff, there's also a Paranoia debuff that is going to fear you if you stay near other people. As you can see, the DH just got feared because he didn't move out. And keep in mind that the tank can also get this debuff, so make sure you're aware of that so you don't fear the tank or anybody else for that matter. At 50%, the boss casts Apocalyptic Nightmare, which is going to summon a bunch of red puddles on the ground around you, and this is going to keep happening until the end of the fight. Obviously, make sure not to get hit by them because they do a ton of damage, but also keep the boss away from them because he gets stacking damage buff if he stands in sight. All the other mechanics will keep happening until the boss is dead, but of course, if you manage to get through that, the dungeon is over and you've beaten Darkheart Thicket. I hope that this guide is going to be helpful for you once Season 3 is live on the servers. Stay subscribed to the channel as I have guides for the rest of the dungeons in the Season 3 pool as well, and I also have short guides for each of the boss fights separately. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and happy king.